And the other area where that's really key is medical office construction. Two ways. One, a lot of docs will simply rent office space and then have a pretty large build-out need. Most banks are going to look at that and say, there's really no asset there, what can I do with it?
Yeah.
We look at the leasehold financing based on the strength of the practice, and we'll do leasehold financing at the same transactional level as we will do a brick and mortgage financing. So you don't
really?
have to...
How do you do? So you treat leases similar to purchases?
Correct. You will get the same advance rates on a leasehold fit-out at Harbor One Bank that you get on a mortgage.
So that's an added risk that you guys take?
Absolutely, but it's based on the strength of the practice.
Got it.
So
okay.
If you've got a practice that is driving value for you, we're going to recognize that you need a place to operate. And if you make an investment decision that you don't want to own, you'd rather rent, as long as the lease is appropriately structured, we know that you're going to be able to pay that over time. On the other side, a lot of times you get into medical office or building, and the physician group is going to be limited in terms of the personal capital they can put in. And 25% down payment is a norm on these acquisitions of buildings. So when you look at a $3, $4, $5, $10 million building, that's $2.5 million to come up with.
Right.
The only alternative to limit that personal investment in most organizations is an SBA 504 loan. And an SBA 504 is a great program, except the only problem is with most doctor groups, by the time you get to the end of the day, it doesn't fit. And most banks will walk you down the path to a 10% investment without understanding the dynamic situation.
So you work in tandem with the SBA loan process?
We do them, when it makes sense, but we also have a process where we don't need the SBA. So we'll combine the mortgage as a first loan, and then we'll give the practice a secondary loan based on its value, the value of the practice, and we'll in essence treat that as a home equity loan they can then infuse into the office project. I'll tell doctors, here is really your capital budget. Here's your access to market capital through bank financing. This, based on your practice, is what you can reasonably afford. Now you put that money anywhere you want. You put it in carpets, in the chair, in pictures in your office. You put it into new doctors. You put it into
website, marketing,
practice development, or if you choose, you can put it in equity.
But you guys are also not really transactional. You have relationships with your clients that go on. So can you explain how your relationship with your clients typically goes?
Relationship is based on need, so most of these doctors are busy.
So right, but do they come to you basically when they have financial issues going on and they want to have some insight on it? Because you guys have this healthcare strategy piece to you as well.
Right. That's the hope, certainly. Everybody accesses differently, and I respect that. Okay. But we drive to have at least 2 active conversations with our clients a year, okay, at minimum. So we want to reach that physician community twice a year to find out what's going on, what their plans are. And I always tell all of our clients that it's less about what happened. Yes, we're dealing with what happened right now. It's more about what's going to happen. So I'm always trying to have forward conversations with our clients. And yes, the physician community is clinically driven. They're busy and they're focused on what they do for their patients. So our job is to make sure they anticipate what they're going to need to do business. And that means having active conversations with folks. If to the extent there are space needs coming up, there are personnel needs coming up, there are going to be cash flow disruptions. A good example of why you want a relationship with your banker is what just happened with the COVID shutdown. When we shut down, elective procedures were stopped. And not only elective procedures were stopped, most folks that weren't or even were in urgent care setting, but in other specialties, they found patient deferral of choice really impacted their
like my plastics all got screwed in that situation because now all the from the elective space, and they're paying for their places, and they're on Route 9 or they're on wherever it is that they are in these nice places paying massive rents, and all of a sudden now everything just kind of dries up. So then they have to focus on what kind of medical surgeons can I do with who I'm affiliated with. Okay, this person got in a car accident. Okay, I can do some sinus reconstruction or something like that. But they were in a tough spot, and all of them. I would say my clients during COVID were anywhere from 30 to, depending on what they were doing, 30% to 50%. A lot of them lost in their business.
So the key is, I would say that to a practice group, every one of our clients got a phone call from one of their bankers. Because that's what we do. We're focused on the professional practice community. That's what we get up in the morning doing. That's what we go home at night doing.
So you don't wait for the call, you call them and say, hey, listen, we know that this is a wild
and this
situation.
is the industry we're focused on. So we're not distracted with other industry. We're focused here. So what's going on here in this healthcare community right now? When PPP came on board, most of our clients were out in front of it. They weren't picking up the phone and saying, who do I call at my bank? Oh, nobody's returning my phone call. So actually, you know, that, because most of the work that we do is driven by word of mouth and consulting, COVID was a real opportunity for us because I think people recognize the value of relationship in banking. And so we actually, where people were getting turned down for PPP loans because they maybe hadn't been borrowers, they were coming to Harbor One Bank, we were taking them on, developing a relationship with them, and most often I like my client to have a line of credit in case something like this happens and the government's not
like just
there
something existing that they can draw on. So I have two things here to follow. So one is, so for when it comes to line of credit, if your practice is in really rough shape, it's going to be harder to get a line of credit, right?
Absolutely.
So you want to get it while you're healthy, not when you all of a sudden you're desperate and you need it, because it's smarter to do it then. But also I guess
it's the same concept as the you know, the prenup. You know, go in, you talk to your banker prior to issues, and it's a working agreement of how things are going to work.
I mean, that's a matter of perspective too, because if who you're about to hook up with has the deep pockets, then you don't want to have that prenup conversation, right?
Certainly.
Right.
But
I mean, you got to be smart.
In the perspective of the banker, if you're dealing with a large bank, you really want that line of credit. Because I'm not about everybody's got to work with Harbor One, but I am trying to educate this community that whoever you work with, protect yourself. So if you're at a large bank and you knew when PPP happened, you didn't get a phone call back, all the more reason to have a line of credit.
I agree.
At that bank.
I very much agree with that. I also want to know, you just mentioned about education. How often do you still find physicians that are starting up their own practice or something like that are not aware that there are different leverages for going to the healthcare? Because most banks don't have this healthcare set up for financing, for transitional financing, startup financing, whatever you want to call it. Like, you know, there's only select banks that even have a program, and out of those, there are several of them that are not run well. So do you find that doctors typically, are they typically aware of these programs now?